Welcome to the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. It's time to know more so you can say no more. It's time for the Clearly Christian Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Cy Smith.
I'm Dr. Cy Smith, and this is Clearly Christian, a podcast about what it means to see the world from God's perspective and the impact this has on training the next generation to live a life consistent with the biblical worldview. If you've been listening and you like what you hear, I hope you'll hit the subscribe button or leave a review. That'll let others know the show's worth checking out, help spread the word, and serve our mission to make a difference. So thank you again for being here, and thank you for helping us spread the word and advance the cause of Christian education. Today's extra credit version of the Clearly Christian Podcast is a deeper dive into the chalkboard points from our recent conversation with Roger Erdvig. We talked about the differences between immersion and integration, the limitations of the inherited public school model, and the urgent need for deeper worldview formation in our young people. So for some further thoughts and questions, let's bring in our show's producer, Brian Lefelock of Brian Media Strategies. Brian, what did you think about the show, and what further questions do you have?
Well, I'm really glad you did it. I could tell that he really made an impact on you. You talked about that and before the show and during. Can you give me a little bit more and give our listeners and watchers a little bit more about the specific way he's touched your life and the way you see the world and the way you lead at Mansfield Christian School?
Yeah, it was really, as I said in the episode, really a couple years in the making, because it's probably been 2 years since I've read that particular book. And it really clicked with me, this idea of not taking what's there and trying to add scriptural truths to it, but starting from a place, and maybe it's because I've been a believer my entire life, so I have a hard time thinking differently than this, but starting from a place that says, listen, all of these things that we understand from Scripture and the Bible, they're real, and they're true, and they exist. I mean, God created the world. There has to be a first mover, right? Science explains this very, very clear. Science is on God's side here. So nothing that we know is true can exist outside of God. So why are we starting with something that doesn't include God and saying, let's bring God in, versus starting from the point that is God and saying, this is how it was originally designed to be, and let me teach from that perspective. Man, that just really clicked with me. And like I said in the show, we have been struggling with this in Christian schools for decades. And I have been so frustrated as to why every survey for teachers and for administrators, hey, what do you need more of from Christian school leaders like me? What can I provide when I come and speak to your staff? And they'll say, biblical worldview integration training. And I'm like, biblical world? We just went over that 3 years ago, or last year, or 5 years ago. We just did it. Why is this coming back around again? Well, they just don't know what they're doing. They don't understand it. And we just go on, and 2 or 3 years later, we'll do the same survey, and they'll say, biblical worldview integration. And we're just like, are we never going to get this right? Are we never going? And I thought, boy, we have to understand this in a whole different way. And I think and there's a lot of reasons why, but we're just set up poorly to do what it is that we need to do.
So Roger talked a lot about integration versus immersion. Is that what you're talking about there? Can you explain the idea of integration being, he said that we're not unintegrated. We're all together. And then he talked about immersion. Is that what you're talking about? Can you dumb that down for me just a little bit?
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's saying, hey, and he kind of explained it like this, that you can't, integration implies that they are separate ideas, that everything you're teaching in your course is separate from religion, separate from God. And so in other words, I'm going to try to teach science without God. So there's a science without God that's a lane, and a science with God that's a lane. And I need to bring the with God lane over into the without God lane. And so it matters where you start. And he's saying that's just the wrong perspective. And here's the basics of how we did this for years. Well, what do you expect if you use a textbook that is written by Houghton Mifflin or Pearson or Prentice Hall or any of those secular companies? They're designed not to include God, right? So if I'm giving kids in Christian schools secular textbooks that don't include God, now I'm forced to somehow figure out a way to bring him in. I mean, so why not go back to using Christian curriculum, which we did for decades, but then we got away from it. Shame on us, because the quality and the bells and whistles and the technology that came with all those secular companies was so great that we said, "Ooh, I think I'll take the secular publishing company and I'll just add some Christian school company to it." and now I'll add the truth and hope that the kids get it. But I don't want to pass up the money or I shouldn't say the money, but the bells and whistles that come with this other company's stuff. Meanwhile, the kid takes home other companies' stuff that never includes any. The homework is based on godless information. Nothing that they do is based on anything Christian. And then we wonder why they don't think Christian. Well, the resources you're using in class aren't even Christian. And now I've given this public school textbook, the secular textbook, this anything goes textbook, to a child who maybe has accepted Christ at 16, went to a public university, graduated at age 22, and now has to somehow teach with a biblical worldview. And they've only been a Christian for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and you just gave them a textbook that doesn't say first thing about Christianity. And now they have to teach chemistry from a biblical worldview? No, it ain't going to happen. They're going to teach exactly what's in front of them, right? And that's usually whatever the textbook and the curriculum companies produce. Most teachers go right there. And at Christian schools, we have to say, no. You have to teach from a biblical worldview. I don't care what those other textbooks say. You know the truth. So you bring in the biblical truth, whether that's in a textbook or not. You bring in the truth and then tell them this is what a view without God will say, and teach the kids how to discern that one. Don't start from the secular and sprinkle in some God. Start with God, which is the reality and the truth, and sprinkle in some secular worldview so that the kids, oh, well, geez, I don't know how you could explain that without God.
Mm-hmm. And so we've done this to ourselves a little bit, because part of the discussion, really fascinating, you talked about the Barna study. 4%, I think you said, if I get the numbers wrong, 4% of boomers have a biblical worldview. I don't know if that's changed from past generations or not.
7% of boomers and Gen X. So you and me would be in Gen X. So us and our parents, 7%, which is 7%. Still bad, but we're at least better than the American average of 4%.
Do you know what it was before, the generation before that? I mean, are we on the decline?
We are on the decline. Fortunately, it's been 4% for about the last 2 years, I think, of the study. The study was done, I think, in 23, 24, and it was 4%, and then we held at 4% this year. But before that, yes, I think they were around that 8, 9, 10, and then it was into the double digits, right?
And so it's important to say then where this is heading, because 1% of Gen Zers do. So we're already there. And so I'm interested, what is their worldview like? Do 99% of Gen Zers think something differently or actually perceive it? Are we there?
Yeah, I think we are. And that's what's really hits me hard, is to think that this up and coming generation, 1 out of 100 lives it out. In other words, they may say, and that's why I brought that other stat up, 62% of the nation may identify as Christians. But in the younger generation, only 1% is actually living that out on a regular, everyday basis. That means, again, there's a massive gap between while they're living on a regular day-to-day basis and how they're living their lives and what they actually say they believe. I tell you where we can see this most plainly is a year ago, I think it was, when we had Senate Bill 2 on the floor in the Ohio. Well, it's an abortion issue. It was clearly a case where if you were against abortion, if you believed that life begins at conception, you would have voted no for this to be put into law. And it was like 50% of the Christians voted yes. And they said, wait a minute, you identify as a Christian, you voted yes for this issue? And they said, well, yeah, I personally believe abortion is wrong and I would never do it. So again, ding, 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 that's their belief. However, I'm not going to tell somebody else how to live their life, and so I don't really want to legislate my morality. Wow, that's a huge disconnect then. You're not living out what you believe. Because if you're not willing to live it out and say, man, this is a moral issue, it's not just wrong for me, it's wrong for everybody. I can't vote yes here and just compromise everything and let you do what it is you do and watch the rest of society plummet in the wrong direction. I mean, that's a clear and unfortunately devastating example of not living out what you believe. Well, I did the right thing for me personally. Wow. Life isn't just all about you. I mean, the whole rest of the world's going to go, where, and you're going to say, yeah, but I did the right thing. What? That's not, who lives like that? That's a very selfish way to live. And you're really committing, as one author says, you're committing civilizational suicide, where you're just giving it away.
Interesting that you just said It's a selfish way to live. The perspective is, I just want everyone to do what they want to do. I don't want to make it about me. I don't want to impose myself. And yet, it's a very selfish way to live. Roger talked about, and it was interesting, he mentioned the 250th Independence Day coming and Jefferson and the Declaration. And he said he wishes that Jefferson would have written the pursuit of virtue instead of the pursuit of happiness. He thinks that's what he meant, but he wrote happiness. And I think he's on to something, and you mentioned that too. It seems like education is all about me. Life is all about me and whatever makes me happy. Can you comment to that a little bit and shed some light on what he was trying to say?
Absolutely. And we have to be careful, even in Christian schools, we don't fall into that trap too, because so much of what we do is designed around that child finding their authentic self. And sometimes we can couch it in, finding God's purpose for your life even, and finding what you were meant to do. And then we fall into saying things like, find what makes you happy. And what makes you happy will be what you want to pursue and things like that. Instead of saying, what would be the best way for me to use the skills and talents and abilities that God's given me, which are things I like to do, right? Because I know I'm good at those things. What has he gifted me to use? And how can I use those for the common good? How can I use those for other people to serve society and to know that I want to make the world a better place? I want to make those around me better. I want to live for something greater than myself. Because when it's just all about, I don't care what everybody else is doing, I just want to make myself happy, somehow I don't end up happy. Because I grow up and I mature and I realize, man, there's way more joy in giving than there is receiving, right? It's like every child has realized that when you grow up, man, it's great being a parent and a grandparent when you can give those presents and you don't even think about receiving anymore because it doesn't give you any fulfillment or any meaning. And you start to mature and you realize, wow, some of those materialistic things or even some of those things I wanted for myself, they fade away in importance in the bigger picture of things, and you see life for really what it is, and you say, the more I give away, the richer my life is, and the more fulfilling my life is, and the less it's about me, the better life that I lead. And so we have to make sure in schools, again, that we don't just set the whole thing up about them, because we're setting them up for a really bad adult experience to think that, hey, life's all about you. Just chase whatever makes you happy, like he said, and not virtue, which is about others. Well, again, great questions, Brian. Thanks so much for asking those things. And thank you again for joining me today on the Clearly Christian podcast. And I trust that now you know more about the difference between immersion and integration and the urgent need for a deeper worldview formation in our young people. If you like the show, again, let us know by following and subscribing. Maybe hit the like button for me. I certainly would appreciate that. Remember, the only way we're going to turn things around in our country is to increase the number of people who hold a biblical worldview and live that out. And the greatest hope we have to get there is clearly Christian education.
Thank you for listening to the Clearly Christian podcast with Dr. Cy Smith. Hear more episodes at clearlychristianeducation.com. If you'd like more information about Christian education in your neighborhood, or if you're interested in education opportunities at Mansfield Christian School, or if you agree with Dr. Smith and want to help him in his mission to influence and awaken Christian America, you can send Dr. Smith an email through the clearlychristianeducation.com website. Message him on the Clearly Christian LinkedIn or Facebook page, or call the Clearly Christian Connection line at 419-756-5651. This has been the Clearly Christian Podcast with Dr. Cy Smith on clearlychristianeducation.com, brought to you in conjunction with Mansfield Christian School, a Brian Media production.